bikers found a boy waiting, a silent plea that would ignite a war. He carried a secret that could destroy them and a message from his mother that challenged their very souls. Faced with an impossible choice, would their code of honor be enough to save him? If you're new here, subscribe and comment your location. Now let's begin. You gotta be kidding me. Is that a kid? The voice cut through the pre-dawn haze, rough as gravel and twice as loud. It was Bull, a mountain of a man with a beard that could house a family of sparrows, standing sentry at the rusted chain-link gate of the Diablos Blancos compound. He wasn't pointing a finger, just staring, his coffee mug frozen halfway to his lips. And there he was, a small, shivering figure huddled against the dying night, knees drawn to his chest on the cracked pavement just beyond their territory. He looked like a ghost, all wide, dark eyes and pale skin, a duffel bag that was too big for him sitting beside him like a loyal, shabby dog. The clubhouse, a converted auto garage that smelled of stale beer, engine oil, and old regrets, emptied out. Men hardened by life and the choices they'd made, shuffled into the cool air, their leather cuts, the vests that marked them as Diablos, creaking a soft, ominous chorus. They formed a loose, wary half-circle around the boy, a pack of wolves confronting a lost lamb. The president, a man named Marcus, whose face was a roadmap of past battles, stepped forward. His voice was low, controlled, but it carried the weight of command. "Son, you lost?" The boy's head lifted, his eyes ancient and terrified. Scanned the faces of the grizzled bikers, the scars, the tattoos, the cold, assessing gazes. They landed on Marcus, on the patch that declared him El Jefe. He swallowed hard, a dry clicking sound in the tense silence. "My name is Miguel," he whispered, his voice trembling but clear. "My mother, she told me to find you. She said, you protect good people." A collective, almost imperceptible shift went through the men. It wasn't a softening, not yet. It was the sound of a key turning in a lock no one wanted to open. Protect good people. The words were so foreign, so laughably misplaced in this world of shades of gray and outright black, that they hung in the air, absurd and terrifying. Marcus's jaw tightened. He crouched down, bringing himself to the boy's eye level, his knees popping in protest. "Your mother. Where is she?" Miguel's composure shattered. A single heart-wrenching tear traced a clean path through the grime on his cheek. "The men in the black SUVs, they came to our house. She hid me in the crawl space under the floor. I saw what they did. She told me to run, to not look back, to find the Diablos Blancos. She said you are the only ones the León Sangriento fear." The name, León Sangriento, the bloody lion, landed like a live grenade. Men who hadn't flinched at broken bones or police raids now exchanged grim, knowing looks. This wasn't just a lost kid. This was a declaration of war, delivered by a 12-year-old messenger. "Inside," Marcus commanded, his voice leaving no room for argument. "Now, Bull, get him some food. Doc, check him over. The rest of you, church." In 10. The clubhouse main room was a monument to a life lived on two wheels and the edge of the law. A polished, hulking Harley sat on a raised platform like an altar. The air was thick with the ghosts of 1,000 parties and 100 whispered threats. Now it was a war room. Marcus stood at the head of the scarred oak table, his fists planted on its surface. "We all know what this is," he began, his voice a low rumble. "The Leons have been pushing into our territory for months. This boy, he's their mistake, and they will come for him. So we give him back." The voice was sharp, pragmatic. It belonged to Paul, the club's treasurer, a man who valued the club's solvency above all else. He was younger, with a slickness to him that the older members distrusted. "We call them, we make a deal. We hand over the kid. They back off our shipment routes. It's clean, it's smart. We're not a damn orphanage, Marcus." A roar of disagreement erupted, led by Bull, who slammed his meaty hand on the table, making the glasses jump. "We are not throwing a child to the wolves, Paul. Have you lost what little soul you had left? His mother is dead because of those animals. His mother is dead because she was in the wrong place at the wrong time," Paul shot back, his eyes flashing. "We start a war over this, and how many of our brothers die? For what? For a kid we don't know? For a principle? Our business is our business, not playing hero." The room fractured. The old guard, men like Bull and Doc, the club's medic, a quiet man with steady hands and a weary soul, remembered the old feuds, the blood debts that were never settled. They saw this as a matter of honor, a line in the sand. The younger members, those who had joined during a time of relative peace and prosperity, saw only a catastrophic business decision. They saw their empire, built on grit and illegal enterprise, teetering on the brink. In the middle of it all was Daniel, the club's sergeant-at-arms. He was a man of few words, his silence more intimidating than any shout. He'd been tasked with sitting with Miguel while the boy wolfed down a plate of eggs and bacon in the kitchen. Daniel had seen the way the boy flinched at every sudden noise, the way his small hands shook. He'd also seen the stubborn set of his jaw, a flicker of courage that shouldn't exist in someone so young. "He's just a kid, Marcus," Daniel said, his voice cutting through the din. It was the first thing he'd said all meeting. All eyes turned to him. "He's not a bargaining chip. He's a kid who watched his mother die and was told we were his only hope. We turn him away. We're no better than the Leons. We're worse because we pretended we had a choice." The vote was tense, hands raised in the smoky light. It was far from unanimous, but the ayes had it. Miguel would stay. For now, the club became a fortress. Sentry schedules were doubled. Weapons were cleaned, counted, and distributed. The air was electric with a tension that was both terrifying and, for some of the older members, strangely familiar. This was what they were built for. And in the center of the storm was Miguel. At first, he was a silent, terrified shadow. But the Diablos, for all their roughness, were a brotherhood. They didn't know how to be fathers, but they knew how to be uncles of a sort. Bull, the gentle giant one, tried to teach him how to play poker, only to have the boy clean him out with a shockingly good poker face. "The kid's a natural shark," Bull would bellow, a genuine laugh rumbling in his chest, a sound that had been absent for too long. It was a moment of pure, unexpected comedy in the grim reality. Doc checked his vitals, his touch professional and kind. No physical injuries, just the other kind, he'd reported to Marcus, his voice heavy. And then there was Daniel. Daniel, who was tasked with the boy's primary protection, found himself oddly soothed by the kid's presence. He showed Miguel how to clean a Glock, the lesson more about focus and discipline than violence. "You see this? This is a tool, like a wrench. You respect it, you don't fear it," Daniel said, his large, calloused hands moving with a precise grace. Miguel watched, mesmerized. "My mom had one. She hid it in a cookie jar," Miguel said quietly. "She said it was for the monsters." Daniel looked at the boy, a strange, protective ache forming in his chest. "Yeah, kid, it is." One evening, as Daniel was reinforcing a window frame, he noticed Miguel staring at a faded photograph on the wall. It was of the club, years ago, with a woman with fiery red hair and a laughing, carefree smile, her arms wrapped around a younger, less haunted-looking Marcus. "That's Elena," a soft voice said from behind him. It was Stella, the club's sole female member. She ran their legitimate front, a bustling custom bike shop with an iron will and a smile that could melt steel. She was the heart of the place, the one who remembered birthdays and bandaged wounds, both physical and emotional. She moved to stand beside Daniel, her shoulder almost but not quite touching his. A current, old and familiar, passed between them, A history of almosts and not quites, a charged chemistry that had never been fully extinguished. She was something else, Stella murmured, her eyes on the photo. Before the cancer. She was the only one who could ever talk Marcus down from a ledge. He hasn't been the same since, Daniel said, his voice low. None of us have, Stella replied, her gaze shifting to Miguel. But that boy, he's stirring up old ghosts, isn't he? Good ones. She looked at Daniel, her eyes searching his. You're getting attached. Daniel didn't deny it. He just watched as Miguel tentatively reached out and traced the outline of Elena's smiling face in the photograph. He reminds me that we weren't always just this. He gestured vaguely at the clubhouse, at the guns leaning against the wall, that there was a time we stood for something more than territory and money. Stella's hand brushed against his, a fleeting, electric touch. Maybe we still can. Days bled into nights. The threat was a constant low hum like a faulty wire. One afternoon, a black SUV identical to the one Miguel had described cruised slowly past the compound. It didn't stop. It didn't need to. The message was received. The pressure inside the club mounted. Paul and his faction grew more vocal, more resentful. We're sitting ducks, Marcus. They're scouting us for him, he'd argue, pointing an accusatory finger at Miguel, who was trying to teach a bewildered bull how to use the streaming service on the club's new TV. See? You click on the one with the crown, Miguel explained patiently, as Bull squinted at the remote. Damn witchcraft, Bull muttered, but he was smiling. It was a fragile, beautiful, heartbreaking piece. Miguel was beginning to laugh, to come out of his shell. He'd started helping Stella in the office, sorting invoices with a seriousness that made her hide a smile. He was becoming part of the fabric of the place, a bright thread in their dark tapestry, which made the betrayal all the more devastating. It happened on a night when the rain was coming down in sheets, hammering on the tin roof of the clubhouse like a frantic drumbeat. Daniel was doing a final perimeter check when a glint of light from the back alley caught his eye. He moved, silent as a shadow, his hand going to the gun at his back. He saw Paul, his collar turned up against the rain, talking in hushed, urgent tones to a figure hidden in the shadows of a nondescript sedan. A moment later, an envelope was passed from the car to Paul, who stuffed it inside his cut. Daniel didn't need to see the contents. The sickening lurch in his gut told him everything. He stepped out of the darkness, the rain plastering his hair to his forehead. Paul. Paul spun around, his face a mask of shock and then, quickly, cold defiance. Daniel, this isn't what it looks like. It looks like you're selling a 12-year-old boy to the people who butchered his mother. Daniel's voice was dangerously quiet. For what? A payoff? A promise? It's for the club, Paul hissed, stepping closer. To save us from a war we can't win. You and Marcus, you're living in the past. This is the real world. Sometimes you have to make hard choices. The only hard choice here, Daniel said, his fist connecting with Paul's jaw with a sickening crack, was deciding not to kill you where you stand. The commotion brought the entire club running. The scene in the main room was one of utter chaos and heartbreak. Paul, nursing his jaw, was held by Bull and two other members. The envelope, ripped open, spilled out stacks of cash and a burner phone. They just wanted the boy, Paul spat, his voice thick with pain and venom. They promised no retaliation. They promised we could keep our roots. It was a business transaction. Marcus looked older than Daniel had ever seen him. The betrayal from within was a poison more deadly than any external threat. He walked up to Paul, his movements slow, deliberate. We are the Diablos Blancos, Marcus said, his voice like grinding stones. We do not deal in the lives of children. You were my brother. Now you are nothing. He nodded to Bull. Lock him in the storage room. We'll deal with him after we deal with the Leons. The brief, idyllic interlude was over. The war was no longer a possibility. It was here, The phone on the table rang, its shrill tone cutting through the tension like a shard of glass. Everyone froze. Marcus picked it up. "Yeah." A smooth, chilling voice laced with a faint Mexican accent came through the speaker. "Marcus, so good to finally speak with you. I believe you have something that belongs to me. A little bird who saw something he shouldn't have. He's under our protection, Salvatore," Marcus said, his voice flat. Salvatore Leon's laugh was a dry, unpleasant sound. "Your protection? How quaint. You have until dawn. Send the boy out, or we will come in and take him, and we will burn your little empire to the ground with all of you inside. This is not a negotiation." The line went dead. Silence descended, thick and suffocating. They were outnumbered, outgunned. This was a suicide mission. It was then that Miguel, who had been listening from the doorway, his small face pale but resolute, stepped into the room. He walked up to Marcus and looked him straight in the eye. "I'm not scared," he lied, his voice trembling only slightly. "My mom said you were good people, that you would know what to do." In that moment, something shifted in Marcus. He looked from Miguel's brave, terrified face to the photograph of his Elena on the wall, to the faces of his brothers, the loyal, the betrayed, the brave, the scared. He saw Stella, her hand finding Daniel's and holding on tight. He saw the empire he'd built, the money, the power, and he saw the soul of his club embodied in this one small boy. He crouched down, just as he had that first morning. "We do know what to do, Miguel," he said, his voice firm, sure for the first time since the boy had arrived. "We're going to protect you." He stood and addressed his men, his voice ringing with a newfound ferocious conviction. "They think our empire is this land, these bikes, this money. They are wrong. Our empire is our word, our honor. This boy came to us because he was told we protect good people. Today we prove that's true. We are the Diablos Blancos, and tonight we remind the Leon Sangriento why they fear the devil." A roar of approval filled the room, unified and fierce. The internal strife was gone, burned away by the fire of a common righteous cause. Plans were made with a grim, determined efficiency. The compound was a fortress, but every fortress has its weaknesses. They would use them. Daniel pulled Marcus aside. "We can't win a straight fight, Marcus, you know that." "I know," Marcus said, a grim smile touching his lips. "We're not going to fight straight. Salvatore expects a siege. He expects us to hide behind these walls, so we're not going to be here." Daniel's eyes narrowed, then understanding dawned. "We take the fight to them. While they're all here waiting for dawn, their main house will be vulnerable. It's a gamble, a huge one." "It's the only one we have," Daniel said. The plan was audacious, insane. A small elite strike team, Daniel, Bull, and two other of their best fighters, would slip out through the old sewer tunnels that ran beneath the compound, a relic from the city's past that only the Diablos knew about. They would hit the Leon headquarters, a flashy nightclub downtown, aiming to capture or kill Salvatore himself. It was a decapitation strike. Without its head, the snake would writhe and die. The rest of the club, with Marcus, Stella, and Miguel, would hold the compound, making enough noise and showing enough presence to make the Leon scouts believe they were all still inside, preparing for a last stand. The goodbyes were quiet, intense. There were no speeches, just hard, backslapping hugs and looks that said everything words could not. Stella walked up to Daniel as he checked his weapons for the final time. She didn't say a word. She just reached up, cupped his face in her hands, and kissed him. It wasn't a gentle kiss. It was a desperate, passionate, soul-searing promise. A promise of a future, of a love that had waited too long, of a hope that had to survive the night. When they broke apart, both were breathless. "You come back to me, Daniel," she whispered, her voice fierce, her eyes glistening. "You come back." "I will," he promised, his thumb brushing away a tear from her cheek. It was a promise he intended to keep. As Daniel and his team vanished into the dark, wet maw of the tunnel, the wait began. The clubhouse was a tomb of tense silence. Miguel sat next to Stella on a worn leather couch, his small hand in hers. Marcus stood by the window watching the rain, his thoughts 1,000 miles away. Hours ticked by. The rain slowed to a drizzle. The world outside was unnervingly quiet, too quiet. Then a single sharp crack of a sniper rifle broke the silence. One of their lookouts on the roof cried out and tumbled from his perch, landing with a sickening thud in the courtyard. They were here. Early, a fleet of black SUVs screeched to a halt outside the gates, disgorging a small army of Leon gunmen. The siege had begun. "Positions!" Marcus roared, the spell of waiting broken. The clubhouse erupted in a storm of controlled chaos. Gunfire erupted, a deafening cacophony that replaced the silence. Muzzle flashes lit up the pre-dawn gloom like malevolent lightning. The Diablos fought with the ferocity of cornered animals. They were outnumbered, but they were defending their home. Bull, a beast unleashed, fired a massive shotgun from a second-story window. The blast scattering a group of men trying to breach the main gate. But the Leons were relentless. They used explosives, blowing a hole in the side of the garage. Men poured in, and the fight became close quarters, brutal and personal. It was a whirlwind of fists, knives, and point-blank gunfire. The air grew thick with the smell of cordite and blood. Miguel and Stella were moved to a reinforced panic room hidden behind a false wall in the office. Elena's idea years ago. As Marcus slammed the heavy steel door shut, he looked at Stella. "No matter what you hear, you do not open this door." Stella nodded, her face pale but determined, pulling a terrified Miguel close. Marcus rejoined the fray, his own rifle speaking the only language these invaders understood. He saw his men fall one by one. Docs shot while trying to drag a wounded brother to safety. Others, whose names were a blur in the heat of battle, went down fighting. They were being overrun. It was only a matter of time. Marcus felt a cold certainty settle in his gut. They had held, but Daniel's team had failed. This was the end. Back in the city, Daniel's team emerged from a manhole cover 2 blocks from the Leon's nightclub, La Cueva. They moved like ghosts through the slick, empty streets. The club was still pulsing with music and light, a stark contrast to the silent war at the compound. They slipped in through a service entrance, taking out 2 guards with silent, efficient brutality. Inside, the music was deafening, the strobe lights disorienting. They pushed through the crowd of oblivious partiers, heading for the VIP section on the mezzanine level. They found Salvatore Leon holding court in a lavish booth, surrounded by bodyguards and beautiful women. He was a handsome man in his 40s, dressed in an immaculate white suit, a cruel smile playing on his lips. He was watching the security feeds from the compound assault on his phone, looking utterly pleased. Daniel didn't hesitate. He raised his pistol and fired twice. The first shot took out the screen of Salvatore's phone. The second hit the champagne bottle on the table, sending glass and liquid spraying. Screams erupted. The music died with a screech of feedback. Bodyguards reached for their weapons, but Bull and the others were already moving, their guns trained on them. "The party's over, Salvatore," Daniel said, his voice cutting through the panic. "Call off your dogs now." Salvatore looked up, his eyes wide with shock. Then fury. He wiped champagne from his face. "You, here, you are a dead man." "Maybe," Daniel said, stepping closer, his gun unwavering. "But you'll be dead first. Call them off." He saw the calculation in Salvatore's eyes. The man was a predator, but he was also a pragmatist. His life was the most valuable thing in the world to him. With a snarl of pure hatred, Salvatore pulled out another phone and dialed. "Fall back," he snapped into it. "All units, fall back immediately." He tossed the phone onto the table. "There, you have your ceasefire. Now, you will let me go or my men will—" He never finished the sentence. A shot rang out from the crowd. One of Salvatore's more loyal or perhaps more foolish lieutenants had decided to play hero. The bullet meant for Daniel hit Bull in the shoulder, spinning the big man around. Chaos exploded. A full-on firefight broke out in the VIP section. Daniel returned fire, dropping the lieutenant, then turned his attention back to Salvatore, who was trying to flee. He tackled him, sending the man in the white suit crashing over the booth's table. It was a brutal, savage fight. Daniel wasn't fighting for strategy anymore. He was fighting for his brothers, for Stella, for Miguel, for the future. He slammed Salvatore's head against the floor once, twice, until the man went limp. The bodyguards, seeing their leader down, either surrendered or were cut down. The silence that followed was almost as deafening as the gunfire had been. "Bull!" Daniel rushed to his friend's side. "Just a scratch, you bastard," Bull grunted, clutching his bleeding shoulder. Did we get him?" Daniel looked at the unconscious form of Salvatore Leon. "We got him." Back at the compound, the gunfire had suddenly, inexplicably stopped. The Leon gunmen, receiving their orders, were pulling back, dragging their wounded with them, leaving their dead behind. The sudden silence was surreal, broken only by the moans of the injured and the crackle of flames from a burning car. Marcus, bleeding from a gash on his forehead, leaned against a wall, his chest heaving. They had held. But at what cost? The steel door of the panic room creaked open. Stella peered out, her eyes wide with fear and hope. Seeing the retreating taillights of the SUVs, she stepped out, pulling Miguel with her. The compound was a scene of devastation. But they were alive. The sun was just beginning to peek over the horizon, its first weak rays illuminating the carnage. And then, from down the road came the familiar thunderous roar of Harley engines. Daniel's team, minus one bike, came rolling up, battered, bloody, but triumphant. Daniel was driving with a bandaged bull-riding pillion, holding a makeshift white flag made from a rag tied to a tire iron. Tied to the back of Daniel's bike was a groggy, beaten Salvatore Leon. Daniel killed the engine and dismounted. His eyes found Stella's across the bloody courtyard. Without a word, he strode towards her and she ran to him, crashing into his arms. He held her tight, burying his face in her hair, the relief so profound it was a physical pain. Marcus walked over to the captive Salvatore, looking down at him with cold contempt. Then he turned to Daniel and nodded, a look of immense respect and gratitude passing between them. Miguel stood by the clubhouse door, watching it all. The sunrise painted the sky in hues of orange and pink, a beautiful, peaceful dawn after the long, bloody night. He saw the broken men, the fallen brothers being tended to, the embrace of Daniel and Stella, the silent victory of Marcus. He walked over to Marcus and tugged on his cut. Marcus looked down. "My mom was right," Miguel said, his voice small but clear in the morning quiet. "You are good people." Marcus felt a lump form in his throat. He looked around at his club, his family, battered, bruised, their empire tested and found to be not of brick and mortar, but of blood and loyalty. He placed a heavy, gentle hand on Miguel's shoulder. "No, son," Marcus said, his voice thick with emotion. "We're trying to be." In the weeks that followed, the balance of power in the city shifted irrevocably. With Salvatore Leon in custody and singing like a canary to the feds to save his own skin, his organization crumbled. The Diablos Blancos, though wounded, emerged stronger, their legends cemented. They had won the war, but the cost was etched on their faces and in the empty spaces at their table. Miguel did not go into the system. How could he? The club was his home now. He had a room next to Daniel and Stella's. Their relationship, no longer a charged secret, was a steady, grounding force in the club. Miguel went back to school under a new name, protected by the ever-watchful eyes of his uncles in leather. One evening, they were all in the main room. Bull, his arm in a sling, was finally mastering the TV remote, much to everyone's amusement. Marcus was at the head of the table, a faint, genuine smile on his face as he watched the scene. Miguel was showing Daniel how to beat a particularly difficult level on his video game. Daniel, the fierce sergeant-at-arms, was frowning in concentration, his large fingers clumsy on the controller. "No, like this!" Miguel laughed, guiding his hand. Stella watched them from the bar, her heart full. She caught Marcus's eye and he gave her a slow, knowing nod. They had lost much, but they had gained something priceless. They had found their purpose again, not in the pursuit of power, but in the protection of one small, brave boy who had seen the devil in them and called it good. The empire stood, but it was no longer just an empire of fear and territory. It was a family, and for the first time in a long time, it was a family at peace, bathed in the warm, setting sun, its future for once looking bright. The silence in the compound was a living thing, thick and heavy with the ghosts of the recent battle. The acrid scent of smoke and spilled blood still clung to the air, a stark contrast to the gentle golden light of the rising sun that painted the shattered windows and scarred walls. It was a victory, but it felt like a phantom limb, a presence defined by its absence of fallen brothers. Miguel stood in the doorway, his small frame silhouetted against the dawn. He watched as Daniel and Stella held each other, a desperate, life-affirming anchor in the storm of aftermath. He saw Marcus, the mighty El Jefe, slowly lower himself onto an overturned crate, his shoulders slumped not in defeat, but in the profound weight of command, of loss, of survival. The man's gaze was fixed on the body of Doc being covered respectfully with a leather vest by two other brothers. Miguel walked over, his steps quiet on the grit-strewn concrete. He didn't say anything. He just stood beside Marcus, a small sentry offering silent solidarity. After a long moment, he reached out and placed his hand on Marcus's arm, the gesture startlingly mature. Marcus looked down, his eyes, usually chips of flint, now soft with a pain too deep for words. He saw the boy's grimy face, the unwavering trust in his eyes, and felt the last of his defenses crumble. He covered Miguel's small hand with his own large, calloused one. "He was a good man," Miguel whispered, his gaze also on Doc's still form. "He told me a funny story about a chicken and a motorcycle when he was checking my bandages." A choked sound, half laugh, half sob, escaped Marcus. "Yeah, he had 1,000,000 of them." He squeezed Miguel's hand. "Come on, kid. Let's get you inside. The cops will be here soon and we've got a story to straighten out." The cleanup was a grim, somber affair. The dead Leons were loaded into their own SUVs and driven to a remote location. A message from the Diablos that they would handle their own mess. The wounded on both sides were treated in the club's makeshift infirmary. A line drawn in the sand that even in war some codes were upheld. Paul was dragged from the storage room, his face a mask of sullen defiance. He was stripped of his cut, the patches ripped from the leather in a ceremony of brutal finality. He was given a stack of cash, his share, Marcus said, because the Diablos paid their debts, even to traitors, and told that if he was ever seen within 100 miles again, he would be buried in the desert. He left without a backward glance, the club's collective glare burning a hole in his back. When the police finally arrived, led by a weary, knowing captain who had a long, complicated history with the club, they found a scene of aided burglary attempt gone wrong. It was a flimsy story, but it was one the captain was willing to accept, especially with the promise of a flood of anonymous tips that would soon cripple the remnants of the Leon Sangriento empire. The balance of power had to be maintained, and a city without the Diablos he knew could be a far more chaotic and dangerous place. In the days that followed, the clubhouse felt hollow. The laughter was quieter, the spaces left by the fallen a constant aching reminder, but there was a new purpose, a fierce, protective energy that centered on Miguel. He was no longer just a witness. He was their ward, their son. The legalities were handled by a slick, expensive lawyer on the club's payroll. With Salvatore Leon in federal custody, flipping on his entire organization to avoid a life sentence, the threat to Miguel was officially neutralized. The DA had no interest in pursuing a case against a traumatized child, especially one now under the formidable, if unofficial, guardianship of the Diablos Blancos. One evening, about a week after the siege, Marcus called another church meeting. The atmosphere was different this time. The air was clear of the smoke of internal conflict. "The boy stays," Marcus announced, his voice leaving no room for debate. It wasn't a question, it was a declaration. "He's one of us now. We protect our own." There were no dissenting voices, only nods of agreement, some grim, some resolute, some like bulls, accompanied by a wide, genuine grin. "But we can't have him growing up in a war zone," Daniel spoke up, his hand resting on Stella's knee under the table. "The club is his family, but he needs a home, a real one." Stella looked at Daniel, then at Marcus. "We want to take him in, officially." A slow smile spread across Marcus's face. It was the first real one since the fight. "Figured you would. It's settled then." And so Miguel moved into the small, surprisingly tidy house that Daniel and Stella shared on the edge of the compound. It had a backyard, a guest room that was quickly painted blue, and a sense of peace that the main clubhouse lacked. For Miguel, it was a bewildering, wonderful new world. Waking up to the smell of Stella's pancakes instead of stale beer and gun oil. Having Daniel help him with his homework at the kitchen table. The fierce biker frowning over 7th grade algebra. It was normalcy, a concept he thought had died with his mother. The club adapted in its own way. Bull, his shoulder healing, took it upon himself to be Miguel's personal bodyguard and chief entertainment officer, which usually involved inappropriate movies and far too much junk food, much to Stella's exasperation. The younger members, those who had sided with Paul, now seemed to vie for Miguel's approval, showing him tricks on their bikes or teaching him how to work on an engine, their earlier pragmatism replaced by a fierce, almost paternal pride. Months passed. The scars, both physical and emotional, began to heal, fading from angry red to silvery white. The club's business, both legitimate and otherwise, flourished in the power vacuum left by the Leons. They were stronger, more respected than ever. But the heart of the club had shifted. It was a crisp autumn afternoon. Miguel was in the backyard trying to teach a patient but confused-looking German Shepherd puppy, a surprise birthday gift from the entire club, how to fetch. Daniel and Stella watched from the porch steps, her head resting on his shoulder, his arm around her. "He's happy," Stella murmured, her heart swelling at the sight of Miguel's unrestrained laughter as the puppy tripped over its own feet. "He is," Daniel agreed, his voice a low rumble of contentment. He pressed a kiss to her temple. "We all are." It wasn't a dramatic happiness, it was the quiet, steady kind, built on shared survival, on chosen family, on love that had been forged in fire. The charged chemistry between him and Stella had settled into a deep, abiding passion, a partnership that was the bedrock of their new life. Later that night, the clubhouse was alive with the sounds of a different kind of gathering. There was no tension, no fear. It was a party, a celebration of life, of survival, of family. The jukebox was playing an old rock ballad, and the air was thick with the smell of grilled meat and camaraderie. Miguel was at the center of it all, showing off his report card, mostly A's, to a chorus of proud cheers and rough, affectionate headlocks. He was no longer the scared, shivering boy on the pavement. He was confident, his smile easy, his eyes clear. He belonged. Marcus watched it all from his customary place at the head of the table, a glass of whiskey in his hand. He saw Bull arm wrestling a prospect. saw the younger members laughing, saw Daniel and Stella slow dancing in a corner, lost in each other. And he saw Miguel, his boy, their boy, beaming. He felt a presence beside him and looked up to see Miguel holding out a can of soda. "For you, El Jefe," Miguel said with a grin. Marcus took it, a genuine smile touching his lips. "Thanks, kid." He took a sip, then set it down. "You know, your mother, she was a brave woman, sending you to us." Miguel's smile softened. "I know. She told me you were the only ones who weren't afraid. But I think she was wrong about that." Marcus raised an eyebrow. "Oh? You were afraid," Miguel said, his young voice wise beyond its years. "You were afraid of losing your family. That's a different kind of afraid. That's the good kind." Marcus felt a lump in his throat. He looked at this boy, this miracle who had walked into their violent world and without firing a shot had remade it. He had reminded them of their own humanity. "She was right about one thing, though," Miguel continued, his gaze sweeping over the room, over his family. "She said you protect good people." He looked back at Marcus, his eyes shining with unwavering faith. "And you do." That was the moment Marcus truly understood. Their empire wasn't the territory, the money, the fear they instilled. It was this loyalty, this love, this boy alive and thriving because of their choice. Miguel hadn't just needed their protection, he had given them their redemption. Later, as the party began to wind down, Miguel, tired and happy, was half asleep on the couch, his head in Stella's lap. Daniel was cleaning up, a domestic scene that was still novel and deeply satisfying. Marcus walked over and crouched down in front of the couch. "Time to turn in, soldier." Miguel nodded sleepily. "Okay." As Daniel helped a yawning Miguel to his feet, the boy turned and, in a move that surprised everyone, threw his arms around Marcus in a tight hug. "Good night, Marcus." Marcus froze for a second, then his arms came up, enveloping the boy in a bear hug that was surprisingly gentle. "Good night, Miguel," he whispered, his voice thick. He watched as Daniel slung a sleepy Miguel onto his back, piggyback style, and with Stella by his side, walked out of the clubhouse and towards their home, the three of them silhouetted against the moonlit night. Bull came to stand beside Marcus, handing him a fresh beer. "Who'd have thought, huh? A kid. This little scrap of a thing changing everything." Marcus took the beer, his eyes still on the empty doorway. "He didn't change anything, Bull." He took a long swallow, then looked at his old friend, a profound peace in his eyes that hadn't been there in a decade. "He just reminded us of who we were supposed to be all along." The clubhouse was quiet now, the echoes of the celebration fading into a comfortable silence. The Empire stood stronger than ever, but its greatest treasure wasn't in a safe or a warehouse. It was in a small house on the edge of the compound, where a former killer, a fierce woman, and a brave boy were a family. They had faced down their demons, and in the eyes of a child they had found not a devil but a savior. And for the Diablos Blancos, that was a victory worth more than all the power and money in the world. The road ahead was still long, and it would never be completely safe, but for the first time it was paved with hope, and they would ride it together as a family. The heavy clubhouse door shut, sealing out the night and enclosing Marcus in a silence that was no longer empty but peaceful. He looked at the scarred table, the patched-up walls, the legacy of violence. But now, he also saw the ghost of a boy's laughter, the imprint of a new beginning. Across the compound in the small house, a different scene unfolded. Daniel tucked a sleepy Miguel into bed. "You're safe now, kid. For good." Miguel's eyes were already closing. "I know," he murmured. "This is what my mom meant." Later, Daniel found Stella on the porch watching the moon. He wrapped his arms around her and she leaned back into his strength. No words were needed. The empire they had nearly lost everything to protect was no longer built on territory or fear. It was right here in the quiet of the night, in the heart of their home, in the soul of a boy who had seen the devil in them and with a child's unwavering faith had called it good. And for the first time in their lives, they believed it. Thank you for riding with us on this emotional journey. Would your own city's toughest bikers make the same choice to protect a stranger? Let us know where you're watching from in the comments, and subscribe for more stories where the line between good and evil is blurred.